Hi everybody, we have a really special story today, and our story is all about Jesus. And in particular, today it's about his death and his burial and his resurrection. Now some of those words might be big words, but we're going to talk about those later. And you might have heard this story before, but if not, we're going to start at the very beginning. Now you know Jesus, he's the Son of God, and he came down to earth fully human, just like you and me. And he lived his life, he grew up, he loved going to Bible class, and he did miracles. Do you remember when he walked on the water? Or maybe you remember the time when he had just a few fish and a few loaves of bread and he fed 5,000 people? Or maybe when he healed a blind man or healed someone who couldn't walk? He did so many miracles. And because of that, a lot of people loved him. And they followed him around everywhere. But then some people hated him for it, and they wanted to kill him. And Jesus knew that they were going to kill him. It's why he came to earth. And we'll talk more about that later. But he knew he had to go to Jerusalem. And when he was entering Jerusalem, a lot of people saw that he was coming. And so they went and they grabbed big palm branches and their clothes, and they laid it on the ground so that Jesus would have something to walk on as he entered. So Jesus rode his donkey into Jerusalem. So to help us remember that Jesus walked on palm branches and people praised him by laying them down, we're going to do an activity with leaves. So if you want to do the activity with me, you're going to need to go out into your yard and find a couple of leaves. I grabbed a couple of different kinds just from the church yard outside. And we're going to use these. So if you need to go find some leaves, hit the pause button right now and go get your leaves real quick. If not, you can just keep watching and you can watch me do the activity. Okay, so now if you have your leaves, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to need a green crayon. And you're going to take a leaf, and I'm going to flip mine on its back side, and you're going to stick it underneath a sheet of paper. And then you're going to hold it really still, and you're going to take the edge of your crayon and you're gonna lightly trace over it. Just go back and forth, over and over. And if you're doing it right, you'll start to see the leaf come through the other side. And it's super cool. So it'll kind of look like this. Super cool, right? So then I'm gonna do another leaf. And you can do as many leaves as you want. This one's a little bit more bumpy, so I'm going to have to hold it down more. But you just keep going back and forth and try to color the whole leaf. And this one doesn't have as much of a pattern on the inside of the leaf, but you can still see the outside of it. And there's that one. So this is just to help us remember how Jesus got to the city of Jerusalem, where he was going to be crucified. After Jesus made it to Jerusalem, he went up to a place called the Mount of Olives, and there he prayed with his disciples. And while he was there, some men came and they arrested him, and they took him before two leaders. The first leader that Jesus went before was the high priest. And he asked Jesus, he said, "Are you the Son of Man?" And Jesus said, "You have said that I am." So the high priest sent Jesus to Pilate, who was like the ruler of the land. And there's a huge crowd of people standing there. And they were yelling at Pilate, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" They wanted Jesus to die. But Pilate found no wrong in him. He didn't think Jesus had done anything wrong. But because of the crowds were yelling, he sent Jesus away to be crucified. But first, soldiers took Jesus and they put a purple robe on him and a crown on his head. And they mocked him and they made fun of him and they spit on him and hit him. They were being really mean to Jesus. And Jesus was in a lot of pain. And then they took the purple off of him and they put on him a crown of thorns. And they led him away to be crucified. Now you might not know what the word crucified means, but in Bible times, They crucified people on a cross. That was the way they put people to death. They hung them on a cross. And that's what happened to Jesus. He hung on the cross and the whole world got dark. And he died. Many people were watching as Jesus died, and they were very sad. You know, the first 4 books of the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that's 4 of the people that were watching Jesus as he died, and they wrote about it in their books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So after Jesus died, one of his friends, Joseph, wrapped Jesus in linen cloths, and he put him in a tomb, and that's where Jesus was buried. And they rolled a big stone in front of the tomb, and a guard was put there to guard the tomb, because they knew that Jesus had said that he was going to rise after 3 days. So they put the guard there to make sure that nothing happened. But something did happen. When 2 of Jesus' friends went to the tomb to see him and to take care of him, they saw that the stone was already rolled away. They didn't have to roll it away. It was already moved, and Jesus was gone. He wasn't there anymore. And instead, there was an angel who was very bright. And the angel told them, Jesus is not here. He has risen. Risen means he came back to life. Everyone was so happy that Jesus was alive. And he taught with them, and he stayed with them for 40 days. And then he had to go back up to heaven. And so he went back up to be with God. And that's where Jesus is now. He's with God in heaven. And we celebrate God. And we celebrate Jesus and how he was born and how he lived on earth, how he was put to death on the cross. He died and was laid in the tomb, and then he rose. And that's our story today. Okay, so now that we've finished our Bible story, our craft for today is we're going to be making a cross. Now, if you have painter's tape like this, yours might be a different color or a different size, you're going to make it in the shape of a cross. But if you didn't have any painter's tape at your house, then just go ahead and draw a cross. And you might need the help of your mom or your dad or your grandparent to help you draw the whole shape. But you're just going to leave that white in the middle. The painter's tape just helps us so we don't color in the middle of the cross because we want it to stay white. We're going to use our crayon box to tell the story of Jesus. The first color you need is green. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to draw lines, and then later you're going to color it in. So green is going to remind us of the Mount of Olives where Jesus prayed. So just at the top, just take your crayon and draw all the way in the corner, like this. And then we're going to go to our next color. Green reminds us of the Mount of Olives, but purple reminds us of the robe that was put on Jesus. So we're going to draw another line in the diagonal. Now they line up together and try to get them as straight as you can, but it's okay if they're not too straight. Blue is the color of royalty, and Jesus was royalty. Royalty is a king, and Jesus was a king. The next color that reminds us and helps us tell Jesus' story is the color brown. Now brown was the color of the crown of thorns that was placed on Jesus' head. So we're going to draw a line for that. Next is the color red. Can you guess what red is? Red is the color of Jesus' blood that was shed for us. Now this color is very important because if Jesus didn't die, then none of our sins would be forgiven. Now if you don't know what sin is are the things that we do wrong. Sometimes we hurt people or we hurt God, and that's called sin. And Jesus came to earth from heaven, and he died on the cross, and he wore all of our sin on that cross, and now it's forgiven. Because not only did he die, but what did he do? He wasn't in the tomb. He rose from the grave. So the next color is black. Now what was black that Jesus was put in? The tomb. So black helps us to remember the tomb. Our next color is white. So we're not going to color this, but white is the color of the angel that was inside the tomb after Jesus was gone. Next is orange. And orange reminds us of how Jesus went to heaven. Orange is kind of like the sun. So Jesus went up to heaven just like the sun is up. And last but not least is yellow. You're about to hear a song, and yellow is the color of the Christian who is too afraid to tell. Now, right before Jesus went back up to heaven, he told them, go into all the world and teach the gospel. He wanted them to teach them all about God and about him and about all the works that he did. And so yellow's for the Christian who's too afraid to tell. We don't want to be too afraid to tell about God, do we? We want to tell everyone we know. So yellow helps us remember to not be afraid, but to shine our lights brightly and to go into all the world and tell them about Jesus. So now, you're about to hear a song played, and I just want you to use this time and color in each of the colors. You've already drawn lines for each of the different colors that help us remember. And as you color, try to remember what each color means so that you can show your picture to someone and you can tell them what the story is. So here we go.
When I was just a little child, no higher than your knee, my mother bought a box of crayons just for me. Well, I picked them up and I opened them up and I looked way down inside. And the colors, they reminded me of Jesus when he died. Oh, red is the color of the blood that he shed. Brown is for the crown of thorns they laid upon his head. Blue is for royalty within him did dwell. And yellow's for the Christian who's too afraid to tell. Well, I colored and I colored till the crayons were all gone. And though I am much older now, the memory lingers on. And when I see a little child with crayon box in hand, I tell them what they mean to me and hope they'll understand. Oh, red is the color of the blood that he shed. Brown is for the crown of thorns they laid upon his head. Blue is for royalty within him did dwell. And yellow's for the Christian who's too afraid to tell.
I hoped you liked that song while we were coloring. It's called the Crayon Box Song. And it helps you remember the story of Jesus too. It was sung by two of my really good friends. They did a good job, didn't they? So, if you haven't finished coloring yet, that's okay. You can finish up, but I just want to review what each color means. So green reminds us of the Mount of Olives where Jesus prayed. Purple reminds us of the robe that Jesus wore right before he was crucified. And blue is the color of royalty, just like it said in the song. And Jesus was royalty. Royalty means like a king. He was a king. Brown is for the crown of thorns that was placed upon his head. Red is for the blood that he shed. Black is for the tomb that he was put in. White is for the angel that was there. Instead of Jesus in the tomb, there is an angel. Orange is for him going back up into heaven. And yellow is for the Christian who's too afraid to tell. And you're supposed to be a Christian that's not afraid to tell. Okay, so now we're ready to take off the tape. Now when we take off the tape, you can see that our cross is white. When Jesus died on the cross, he took away all of our sin. Think of sin as like dirt. And when Jesus died on the cross, he washed that sin away. And now our lives are white as snow. When your clothes are dirty, you put them in the wash and they become white and clean. So when Jesus took all of our sin on the cross and he hung there, all of our sin went away. It was gone. We were forgiven. God forgave us all because of Jesus. That's how Jesus saved the world. That was his job to do. When he came to earth, he was here to save us from our sins. So now, every time that you look at a crayon box, I want you to think of each color and how it helps you tell Jesus' story about how he was here on earth, he died, and he was buried, and most of all, that he rose from the dead. He was resurrected. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day. Bye, kids.